The 1950s were a defining era for the United States, a time of transformation that shaped the country's trajectory for generations to come. In the wake of World War II, America emerged as a global superpower, economically strong and culturally influential. This decade is often remembered as a golden age of prosperity, but beneath the surface lay complexities that continue to influence society today. From booming suburbs to the rise of consumer culture, from civil rights struggles to the emergence of rock and roll, the 1950s represent a pivotal moment in history. But what drove this rapid transformation, and what lessons can we learn from it? Let's explore how post-war prosperity shaped modern America. Economic prosperity, the engine of the boom. The end of World War II marked the beginning of an unprecedented economic expansion. Soldiers returning from the war found an economy primed for growth. Factories that had produced weapons and military supplies during the war quickly pivoted to producing consumer goods. This industrial shift flooded the market with products that Americans had been unable to buy during wartime rationing. Household appliances, cars, televisions, and other modern conveniences became widely available. The economy thrived on this surge in demand, and millions of jobs were created. In 1950, the US accounted for nearly half of the world's industrial production, a dominance that solidified its position as a global economic leader. With stable jobs and rising incomes, Americans began spending like never before. The concept of consumerism took root, reshaping American identity. Advertisements urged families to purchase the latest gadgets, often playing on ideas of status and success. Keeping up with the Joneses became a cultural phenomenon, reflecting a society eager to showcase its achievements through material wealth. The GI Bill, opportunities and inequalities. One of the key drivers of this prosperity was the GI Bill, officially known as the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944. This groundbreaking legislation provided returning veterans with benefits that included low-interest home loans, funding for college education, and financial support for starting businesses. For many, the GI Bill was a ticket to the American dream. Millions of veterans bought homes, attended college, and climbed the economic ladder. Home ownership rates soared, and higher education became accessible to a broader segment of the population. This created a ripple effect, boosting industries like construction, education, and manufacturing. However, the benefits of the GI Bill were not distributed equally. Racial discrimination and systemic barriers often excluded Black veterans and other minorities from accessing the same opportunities. Redlining practices in housing markets meant that many non-white families were denied loans or restricted to segregated neighborhoods. These injustices contributed to a racial wealth gap that remains a challenge today. Suburban life, the new American dream, perhaps the most iconic symbol of 1950s prosperity, was the rise of suburbia. Affordable housing developments like Levittown offered millions of middle-class families the chance to own a home, with a yard, a car in the driveway, and a safe neighborhood to raise children. Suburbia represented stability and success, and for many, it was the culmination of the American dream. This shift to suburban living was fueled by the post-war baby boom, as families sought more space to accommodate their growing households. Suburbs also promised a sense of community, where neighbors knew each other and children played in the streets. However, the suburban boom also had downsides. The development of sprawling suburban areas contributed to modern urban sprawl, leading to increased reliance on cars and a decline in public transportation systems. Additionally, the exclusion of minorities from these neighborhoods reinforced segregation, limiting social and economic mobility for many. Car culture and the interstate highway system. The rise of suburbia was inseparable from the rise of car culture. In the 1950s, car ownership skyrocketed as automobiles became more affordable and practical. Cars represented freedom, independence, and status, reshaping how Americans lived, worked, and socialized. The construction of the interstate highway system, initiated in 1956, was one of the decade's most transformative developments. This ambitious project connected cities and regions across the country, enabling faster travel and opening up new economic opportunities. It revolutionized trade, tourism, and commuting, making suburban living even more accessible. Yet this progress came at a cost. Highways often cut through urban neighborhoods, displacing communities, particularly minority communities, and altering city landscapes. The environmental impact of increased car usage also became evident in the following decades. The golden age of entertainment. The 1950s marked a revolution in entertainment. Television, once a luxury, became a household staple. By the end of the decade, nearly 90% of American households owned a TV. Families gathered around the screen to watch iconic shows like I Love Lucy, The Ed Sullivan Show, and Leave It to Beaver. TV didn't just entertain, it shaped culture, influencing everything from fashion to politics. Meanwhile, a new musical genre captured the hearts of America's youth: rock and roll. Artists like Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, and Little Richard broke boundaries with their energetic performances and rebellious spirit. Rock and roll wasn't just music, it was a cultural movement that challenged traditional norms and gave voice to a new generation. Drive-in theaters, jukeboxes, and fast food chains like McDonald's also became integral parts of American leisure, creating a vibrant youth culture that continues to influence modern life. Women in the 1950s. Between tradition and change. The 1950s often idealized women as homemakers, portraying them in advertisements as the perfect wives and mothers. Shows like Father Knows Best reinforced these roles, celebrating domesticity as the ultimate aspiration for women. During World War II, many women had entered the workforce, and by the 1950s, some remained in jobs, particularly in teaching, nursing, and clerical roles. These experiences planted the seeds for second-wave feminism, as women began questioning the societal constraints placed on them. Although the movement for gender equality would not fully take off until the 1960s, the conversations that started in the 1950s laid the groundwork for future progress. Civil rights and social inequalities. The 1950s were also a critical period for civil rights. While many Americans enjoyed post-war prosperity, others faced systemic barriers. Racial segregation in schools, housing, and public spaces was the norm, and minorities were often excluded from the benefits of the booming economy. The Supreme Court's decision in Brown v. Board of Education, 1954, declared racial segregation in schools unconstitutional, sparking a wave of resistance and activism. Leaders like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. began gaining prominence, setting the stage for the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Despite these early victories, progress was slow, and many challenges remained. Redlining, voter suppression, and unequal access to education perpetuated racial inequalities, leaving a lasting impact on American society. Cold War tensions and McCarthyism. While prosperity defined domestic life, the shadow of the Cold War loomed over the 1950s. The rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union dominated foreign policy, leading to an arms race and the ever-present threat of nuclear conflict. At home, the fear of communism fueled McCarthyism. Named after Senator Joseph McCarthy, this period was marked by paranoia, blacklisting, and accusations of subversion. Thousands of Americans, particularly in Hollywood, government, and academia, faced scrutiny and career-ending allegations. While McCarthyism eventually waned, it left a lasting legacy, raising questions about civil liberties, government overreach, and the dangers of ideological extremism. The enduring legacy of the 1950s. The 1950s were a time of optimism, innovation, and growth, but also a time of inequality and conflict. The economic boom laid the foundation for modern consumer culture, while advancements in transportation, entertainment, and housing transformed American life. However, the decade's challenges, racial discrimination, gender inequality, and political paranoia highlight the complexities of progress. The struggles and triumphs of the 1950s continue to shape debates on equality, civil rights, and the American dream. The 1950s were more than just a golden age. They were a turning point in history. From suburban living to rock and roll, from civil rights activism to Cold War anxieties, the decade's legacy is deeply woven into the fabric of modern America. What do you think defines the 1950s most? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights into history and its impact on the present.